need somewhere I can spend my time. Can I spend my dreams with you? Go away somewhere we can hide. Let us sleep since I am chased but not afraid. People misbehave. I'll be waiting for you.
I'm back. I want to thank everyone for the warm well wishes, and I especially want to thank my wife for this new podcast setup. I now have a condenser mic and a stream deck, and I figured I'd just play with my stream deck real quick.
Hello, everybody. Ha ha ha. I love my new stream deck.
Oh, yeah.
Let's get into this new Chaos Sector video, which should put everything in check when it comes to the Idaho 4 case. And please go give a like to the Chaos Sector for this incredible piece of journalism that they did.
Welcome to the Chaos Sector. What do you guys think about the white Hyundai Elantra in the gas station surveillance? It appears they are coming from Taco Bell, right? I mean, where else are they coming from in that area traveling westbound? In the first series, we analyzed if that was Kohberger's vehicle, of course. And we asked the same question, where would he be coming from? We thought about the scenario where Kohberger would leave the house for a moment to stall some time, then return. But even though it seemed a bit logical at first glance, it started to break down. For one, there would be no need to travel that far away from the home if you're stalling time. You would have to keep an eye on the home to make sure your plan would not be ruined by any, quote, inconveniences. Second, the fact that the vehicle is speeding, then Kohberger would be speeding back to the home, as if he was notified when to come back. This would mean that someone in that neighborhood, or as we broke down, someone in the victim's home, had to been in communication with Kohberger to notify him when to return to the home. Not impossible, but highly unlikely. Once we found out that the gas clerk claimed to not know which direction the vehicle headed, and News Nation's Brian Enton claimed the vehicle, quote, appeared to be heading out of town, we knew for certain that wasn't Kohberger. See, for Enton to say the vehicle appeared to be heading out of town, yet the clerk claimed she didn't know which direction the vehicle went, proved that she actually did know, but Moscow PD told her to say she didn't know. Enton, on the other hand, was trying to generalize the issue, because we all know there are cameras facing that intersection, a bit of damage control on his end. We were intrigued by that screenshot, as it appeared altered. And the reason it appeared altered is because it's not Kohberger's vehicle. Of course, it's the same make and model, but not the same year. It would be visible if there were clearer photos of it. And also surveillance released. Of course, we focused on other issues after that, but now we return to this vehicle as it's starting to look like it was speeding. For good reasons. Let's try to sort out this private driver issue because it's all over the place.
First things first, let's give Chaos Sector a round of applause. They deserve credit for what's going on in the Moscow, Idaho 4 case. They've always been ahead of the curve, and us content creators, really value what they say.
The individual interviewed claimed to be the private driver for the girls that night. Now, from what we've broken down, that is not the private driver based on their suspicious statements alone. But could this be the same person who provided the receipt from Taco Bell to the authorities? Or maybe that was someone else. The reason I question this is because if many claim it was Eric Gower who was the private driver, then obviously someone else was interviewed, claiming to be the private driver. In other words, someone impersonated the private driver. This would automatically prove there are multiple people being depicted as the private driver. Remember, the name Eric Grower is in the PCA. From our research, there isn't anyone named Eric Grower in Moscow, nor Pullman, so it would appear to be a typo. But then, that just makes things even worse, because now we assume it would be Moscow's Eric Gower. But once again, the person interviewed claimed to be from Pullman, Washington, staying 1,200 feet away from Koberger. I know this is redundant, but we're getting there, trust me. So in this setting, based on the PCA, we have one person identified as the private driver. Then we have someone else being interviewed, claiming to be the private driver. If someone is pretending to be the private driver, well, almost by default, that proves that Eric Gower wasn't the private driver. Why? Because who would feel the need to pretend to be the private driver and claim to be from Pullman, Washington? It's almost as if someone just randomly called the news station and said, "Hey, I want to be interviewed. I was the private driver for Kaylee and Maddie the night of the murders." "Oh, really? Let's hear your story." Mind you, Moscow PD didn't contact the private driver. The private driver contacted them. And this was after they heard about the murders, which prompted them to call the authorities. At that time, heck, Moscow PD didn't even know there was a private driver to even reach out to. Mind you, again, it was the so-called private driver who gave a time of 1 to 45 a.m. of the girls being dropped off. This was stated by the so-called private driver to Moscow PD, and then they reported it. Then this time was changed to 1:56 a.m. after the sister came out and scrutinized Moscow PD for reporting the incorrect time. But like we mentioned, it's not Moscow PD's fault, because wait a minute.
Why would Olivia be scrutinizing the time of the girls getting home? That just makes you wonder. I've been in the hospital for the last week, and the doctors told me to rest and everything else, from suffering a mild heart attack. But this case, guys, even with me being in the hospital, this case weighed heavy on my mind. And my wife, she'd come up to see me and stuff, and she could tell, that something was weighing on me. So I told her, and she's like, "Honey, just forget about the case till you get home. You need to rest. You need to regain your strength. Just forget about the case." And I looked at my wife, and I'm like, "Honey," it is hard to do. It's hard to forget about a case with this magnitude. It's hard to forget about this case. It really is, because this is a complicated case. It's a messed up case. And it's, even with this case, probably not going to be over till summer of next year, or spring of next year, even after the case is over with. There's a lot of people who's not ever going to forget this case. Try as hard as they can, they're not ever going to forget this case. And I'm more than likely one of them who's not ever going to forget about this case. Because of all the treachery in the case, all the cover-ups, all the corruption. This case is going to be one of the hardest cases to ever get over. A lot of us will try to get over it, but it's still going to be hard to get over.
Minute, here we go again. If the sister is claiming she physically saw the girls arrive back at home around 1:56 a.m. from this same so-called private driver, wouldn't she also know that Moscow PD was given that time of 1:45 a.m. from that same so-called private driver? So shouldn't she be scrutinizing the so-called private driver more for giving the wrong tie anyway? Which brings us back to what we assumed happened. Someone framed Eric Gower, but used the name Eric Grower. Oh, this fuckery is just agitating to deal with. This person identified as Eric Grower was more than likely the person being interviewed by Law and Crime. They didn't reveal their name publicly, though. But the person who interacted with Moscow PD was a different person who provided that same name, Eric Grower, for the PCA. Yep, a bunch of tangled webs. We're only trying to detangle everything to get a clearer picture. Now, the person who interacted with the authorities provided a receipt from Taco Bell as an alibi, which doesn't clear them on its own, by the way. Just because they provided a receipt does not mean they didn't circle back or come back later to the home and murder those housemates. It was approximately 2 a.m. when the girls were dropped off. That gives the so-called private driver enough time to go home, change clothes, head right back to the home around 4 a.m. Could have easily drove to Taco Bell, which is about 5 to 10 minutes from the victim's home, come back, commit the murders or be a part of it, then head right back to Blaine Street, turn on White Avenue, be spotted by the gas station surveillance at 3:45 a.m., and then head out of town afterwards. Well, seems that white Hyundai Elantra is Eric Grower, a.k.a. Batman. But I guess getting Taco Bell meant, well, he was going to be feeling the effects of those double-stuffed chili tacos later. Talk about demolishing a home. This guy demolished his bathroom. Yikes. Just a few jabs, but I think they provided some, quote, digital information to prove their alibi. Digital information. Hey, what? They have phone calls and text messages proving what? They were at home? We can't know that, so it's not confirmed. But let's focus on Taco Bell itself. Since there is a Taco Bell right off Troy Road and Blaine Street, we assume this is the location he went to after dropping the girls off. Now, don't get caught up in us claiming he dropped the girls off. This is based on whoever the hell this is claiming to be the private driver. So they head to that location, and then what? They went home? Oh, really? Let's reel in one of the fish here. Let's say they went home. All right, combining that statement with the statement from the person being interviewed, we caught them red-handed, or better yet, in surveillance. The person being interviewed claimed to be from Pullman, right? This would be the so-called private driver. The other so-called private driver claimed they headed to Taco Bell and then went home. We're just going to assume they so-called stay in Pullman. And there's your suspect caught by the gas station surveillance. Ah, yes, went to Taco Bell as the alibi and headed back to their home somewhere in Pullman. They don't stay in Pullman, in my opinion, but it's possible. This is the white Hyundai Elantra. Whoever was behind that wheel, zipping down White Avenue, is the person who attempted to frame Koberger, who of course stays in Pullman. In the criminal's mind, it seemed to be a great plan. But with all criminals, their plans are usually quite stupid. Oh, this Koberger guy has a white Hyundai Elantra. It will be easy to frame him. Once we take care of those housemates, drive to Oregon, and dump the vehicle. Oh, okay, yeah, this is gonna work. And there's always that quote, smart criminal who questions it. Hey man, I don't know about this. I mean, yeah, he has the same car and all, but how are we gonna make sure nothing comes back to us, like the license plate or something? Nah, man, we got the pigs on the payroll. They're gonna help us. We can't trust those pigs. They'll stab you in the back. If they want to keep their jobs, trust me, they'll do what we say. I don't know, man. I feel like this isn't worth it. Let's just go in there and kill the housemates and get out of there quick. Those kids won't snitch anyway. Why make it harder than it should be? Listen, that dude is fucking with my money, snooping around and shit. He's making my customers nervous on campus. He's got to be taken care of, so we're going to frame him for this shit. Now, either you're in, or you're too scared to be a part of the clique. Yeah, I'm in, man. My bad. I'm just paranoid. It's all good, man. We take care of those housemates who fucked us over, and we take care of that Koberger dude, too. I got some people who's gonna work on the inside at WSU, don't worry. How can we prove he did it,
Could this shit have really
I
happened,
mean,
guys?
just because his car would be there. How do we put
Could
him
there
in
have
the
been
house,
a little
though?
crime ring
That's
there
where the
in
pigs come in,
Moscow
man,
and
don't worry.
Pullman
You know how much money we pay
framing
those fuckers under
Koberger
the table?
for this
They
murder?
have no choice but to work for us. The university's
It's
all
getting
already
deep,
on the
guys.
team. Just
It
stay
really
cool.
is getting deep.
We got that girl Dylan on the inside, too. She's down. What about the other chick, the other girl, Bethany or whatever? She's not going to snitch, but she'll get dealt with if she says anything. You're putting a lot of trust in some girls, man. What happens when the pressure comes down on them and they snitch? What pressure? What the fuck are you talking about? The pigs aren't pressing them. You need to get a grip, man. Add a bit of social networking, and before you know it, an innocent man is framed for murders that the drug cartel is responsible for. Not the high-ranking members, of course, but those goons, the foot soldiers, the arms of the cartel. They went in and took those housemates out. But they made sure frat guys and sorority girls were connected as well, in case they do go down. Threat of coercion. You want to dabble in our game, you're going to have to prove your loyalty. So many of those college students were also bound by the rules of the drug ring, and to protect the drug cartel, Moscow PD, the FBI, and every other police department in that region simply swept it under the rug, because it always comes back to who is overseeing such criminal activity. Yes, the FBI. So the big fish are either informants for the FBI or they're goddamn FBI agents themselves. This is how a massacre rooted in drug trafficking can be blamed on a single man. It's absurd to think that one person can accomplish this feat. It's physically impossible. And that was the beginning of our investigation, the absurdity of a lone killer taking out 4 people within a 10-minute time frame with a close-ranged weapon. The mainstream media never questioned this, especially old hag Nancy Grace. Need to change that to disgrace, by the way. She was really pushing that narrative without...
Old hag Nancy Grace. Ha ha ha. Nancy Grace needs to learn the truth and stop peddling lies in this case.
without even questioning it. Her face it's just so disgusting, the type of person who would be a part of framing Kohberger in society. And that's why it's so easy for the mainstream media to slander Kohberger's image, because these are the same type of people who go along with the frame in society. Some ask if the gas clerk was a part of framing Kohberger. These people are not directly a part of the frame. Some have no idea of what went on, but they're told to do a specific thing, and they just comply. Which brings me back to Bethany. I think Bethany was in that position. She was told to go along, but in her heart she didn't want to. That's why she tried to spend time with Ethan and Xana at the party, because she knew that was the last time they would spend time together. Sure, we still hold her accountable, as she could have done something. But not everyone has that courage, end up living with regrets. Dylan, on the other hand, was more willing to comply due to her connections, which we assume she had, her connections to the drug traffic.
Dylan keeps coming up a lot in this case. I mean, yes, she was a surviving roommate, but what do we really know about Dylan Mortensen? Was she involved in that drug trafficking ring in Moscow?
What is her ulterior motives towards the roommates? Was she mad that Kaylee was leaving and going to Texas that following Monday? I think she has more responsibility in this case than she's even letting on.
Organization. More willing to appeal to her handlers than caring for her peers. Could be mainly out of fear, but these are the consequences of playing with fire. And once again, her whereabouts were not accounted for. Everyone else in that house was accounted for. If you really think about it, if her whereabouts weren't accounted for, then she is, by default, a potential suspect. That's just how a detective would view her. A new detective joins the case, finds out one of the survivors' whereabouts hadn't been accounted for, and they say, "Hold on. Where was Dylan before arriving back home?" We don't know." "What do you mean you don't know? Did you ask her?" We didn't get a chance. I mean, I think she was out on the town." "The fuck where? She just told you she was out on the town and you didn't find out exactly where?" "Oh my fucking, what's going on around here?" "What if she is a suspect? How do you not know where Dylan was, but you know where everyone else was that night? Are you kidding me? What the fuck is? I can't believe what I'm hearing."
That's a very valid question. Where was Dylan that night? Her whereabouts was not documented that night. Bethany's was. Xana and Ethan's were. Kaylee and Maddie's were, but not Dylan. Where the fuck was she that night?
I can't do this. Call Ms. Mortensen right now. This is unprofessional. How does the chief allow this? I can't believe it. Yeah, a genuine detective would lose their shit about it. Well, I think we can conclude that the white Hyundai Elantra was a vehicle used to frame Koberger. They didn't get the time right, though, because obviously the circumstances pushed the time forwards a bit. It could have been timed for the 3 a.m. hour, but because there was still activity in the neighborhood, including officers stopping students, they had to wait. And this caused Bonnie to arrive at the home at a later time than what was expected or planned. I assume they tried to take care of the housemates as quickly as possible, like moments after they came back home. They were being watched, of course. Moscow PD simply aligned the time of death with Bonnie's so-called DoorDash delivery. They had to change the time of death to cover up that delivery was a sham. Remember, the FBI visited the crack. But I don't recall Moscow PD visiting that crack to verify the DoorDash delivery. What's the...
I love it when she says the crack. I really do.
point, even though both are law enforcement. One is known for being corrupt in their own right, but the other is known for literally setting up the corruption for the other to carry out. In other words, the FBI visited that crack to shut everything up quickly. But someone snuck in and inquired about the DoorDash delivery and revealed a key piece to the puzzle. Bonnie was pretending to be the DoorDash driver and knew the trail would lead back to her. So she came back up there after the murders and spoke to the employees, we assume, to see if authorities had stopped by. Remember, the employees knew she was the DoorDash driver for one of the victims, so she had to keep tabs on if they had spoken to authorities, making sure her identity hadn't been revealed to anyone.
Right there, they knew that she was the DoorDash driver.
Just asking about things here and there. Because if her identity had been revealed, well, it obviously is linked to her criminal history. But even more damaging, that she actually ordered the crack and delivered it. And this would make her a suspect, because her so-called DoorDash delivery was not ordered by Xana. Are you guys grasping this? I mean, I know it's been established, but if we are trying to figure out who's responsible for those housemates' deaths, it starts with this evidence. Yes, evidence. And many are not staying on this path. You have to keep digging into this, regardless if it seems redundant. The employee stated she had quit dashing for a while and assumed she was, quote, traumatized from the experience. Yeah, she quit dashing because she hauled ass to another state. And guess where she ended up? That's right, Pullman, Washington. Her DUI arrest was in Pullman, which was in February of 2020.
Exactly why did she haul ass to another state after the murders? I'd like to know that. Why, after the murders, Miss Bailey hauled ass to another state, and why she was spotted in Jack in the Box, ordering the food for Xana and then delivering it to Xana. The timeline in this case is completely and utterly fucked. The whole 4 a.m. timeline of the murders. I don't think the murders happened at 4 a.m. I think they happened like way earlier. Like around the time those guys that got stopped on the band field about 3:15 in the morning, and Saeed, who I've later discovered owns his own bungalow apartment complex like less than 4 minutes away from Banfield. There's a lot going on in this case, and I think the reason why I did have the mild heart attack was I was so stressed out and exhausted because I was doing all the research, and I went without sleep for like 3 days because I was doing so much research. And my old heart is like, you need to take a break and put me in the hospital. But my wife would give me update reports on the on everything, and I asked her to post faceless videos on YouTube. Which I found out she did, and I'm thankful that I have a wife that loves me that much, and and supports me in what I do for you guys. My 8-year-old didn't really understand what was going on. All she knew was Daddy was in the hospital. But I do I do humbly thank all the well wishes and stuff, and the prayers, and I just needed a break, and my heart gave me the break by giving me by having a heart attack. It was just totally messed up, and I think at the same time it was God telling me that I need to slow down, because I was going balls to walls on this case, and I hadn't even taken a break or a day off or anything. And there's quite a few of my subscribers that told me take as much time as I need to, but just laying in that hospital bed, I missed my subscribers, I missed my members, I missed everyone on YouTube. And I vowed, as soon as I got home, even against my wife's instructions, she didn't want me getting back on YouTube for at least a week after I got home from the hospital. But I vowed that I vowed to myself that my first day back home, I'd get on YouTube, try out my new equipment. My wife was kind of irritated at me at the fact that I disobeyed her. But I promised her today would be the only day I would get on YouTube, and then I would take rest of today, Saturday and Sunday, Monday and Tuesday off. Yeah, guys, having a heart attack is not fun. Really not. Yeah, like I told my wife on the way home, I need to start putting my priorities more in order, because the doctor told me if I had another heart attack, mild or not, I wouldn't be coming out of the hospital alive.
'23, trying to lay low in the same state that Koberger resided in. He had already been arrested months prior, and look at Bonnie just thinking she's gotten away with it, with her partner in crime. The FBI knew who the DoorDash driver was. Those employees told them it was a girl with dark hair, and may have even told them that she ordered and delivered the crack to the customer, Xana. So the FBI just has their brooms going around sweeping everything under the rug because it will ultimately come back to their doorstep. Yes. Moscow PD and other local and state police departments follow suit.
And that's why the DoorDash driver was never identified in the so-called unredacted PCA. They had to hide that person, being Bonnie, because even if it's just her being the DoorDash driver alone, it would raise suspicions, let alone discovering that she actually ordered the food for Xana. Couldn't let any of that come out.
Exactly. Now think about this from this perspective. They protected Bonnie's identity in being the DoorDash driver in spite of the 4 victims. You see, they are literally allowing their deaths to be swept under the rug, my friends. It's sad, but it's not the first time this has happened. Protecting the killers, because the trail of blood will come right back to them. What do you expect from corruption? It's that simple. Now some may ask, well, if this is all true, and Koberger knows he's being framed, and has a legitimate alibi, why hasn't this been expressed? Well, the preliminary hearing was that moment to challenge all of the allegations, but the defense was not given a chance to do so. Remember, Bethany was supposed to testify, as the defense claimed she has exculpatory evidence that would exonerate Koberger. Initially, she agreed to testify, essentially in support of the defendant. Then all of a sudden, no bueno. The ultimate form of damage control. Her attorney didn't want her to testify, and it took a key witness away from the defense. And also, Koberger did state that the DNA found on the knife sheath was not his. It was depicted as the typical loony serial killer trying to gaslight the court, and if you recall, the prosecution did address this because they knew he knew that he was framed. And of course, that's why they're sweating bullets right now. See if the judge is basically shutting down a preliminary hearing. They're not allowing the defense to challenge the charges, which is a violation of a defendant's right to due process. We've stayed away from the court aspects. That's a whole other level of fuckery. But yeah, Koberger and Ann Taylor have tried time after time, and when the preliminary hearing was quashed, well, all they could simply do is keep filing motions to dismiss and give reasons that warranted dismissal based on their claims. But to wrap it up, the white Hyundai Elantra spotted in the gas station surveillance was, get this, an impersonator, someone pretending to be Koberger. Just like Bonnie impersonated a DoorDash driver.
I think it was Demetrius' younger brother, because Demetrius' younger brother had a Hyundai Elantra just like that one on the screen, and it had tinted windows. I think they did frame Koberger because Koberger's Hyundai Elantra didn't have tinted windows. That one does.
Just like someone impersonated a private driver in the Law and Crime interview, just like someone impersonated Eric Gower, but used the name Eric Grower as the private driver, just like someone who may have been known by the girls or not impersonated a private driver in the red Mustang, only to be found crashed and abandoned sometime after the murders took place, with a fucking forensics team inspecting the vehicle. Dumped the white Hyundai Elantra in Oregon after attempting to frame Koberger, thinking it's so far away from Moscow, it would appear to be a common car wreck. It's the same vehicle, my friends. They tried, but we tracked them down. What genuine detectives were supposed to do. This is the chaos sector. Oh wait, to Gray Hughes. We're keeping an eye on you, buddy. Still trying to execute the same damage control in this case as the Kanika Jenkins case, I see. Somehow this guy has been interviewed by Court TV about the Idaho murders? Yeah. Bring a guy on your show as a guest who's doing the same thing you're damage control. As the saying goes, birds of a feather always try to keep the truth from coming out. Many may have just learned about him or think he's doing decent work in his so-called investigations. But, we know who you are, and you definitely know who we are. Let's put it this way. He's one of the DC agents from the Kanika Jenkins case who claimed she simply walked into a freezer and accidentally froze to death. Yeah, even provided that goddamn 3D rendering of Kanika, stumbling through the hotel by herself. Got millions of views, by the way, pushing the narrative that she somehow was all alone in that big hotel, just stumbling around. Yeah, Kanika was able to make it through the hotel, up to the kitchen, but never once did she turn back around and question where she was going. That's because she was forced to go where she went. Ah, but the 3D model of Kanika just stumbled through the halls. It was actually a mockery of her death, and he spent a lot of time and effort debunking a lot of theories, although some needed to be debunked. But he never came near the chaos and attempted to debunk us. He wouldn't dare. He knew who to stay away from because he couldn't debunk the real investigators. Somehow the freezer was turned on. Gray Hughes, the kitchen wasn't in operation, don't you remember? Who turned on the freezer? Somebody had to turn it on. It didn't just come on by itself, right? How did she have the strength to walk all the way throughout that hallway but couldn't open a freezer door from the inside with a fucking glowing knob handle? Remember Gray Hughes? The door didn't lock from the inside. It had to be physically locked
I've never heard
from the
of Gray
outside.
Hughes.
Remember Gray Hughes? Who locked the freezer door and turned on the freezer, huh? What about the two siblings at the party, whose father was a supervisor for the construction company working on that very fucking kosher kitchen, huh? Wouldn't he have access to that kitchen under construction, huh, Gray Hughes? You never addressed that. Now did you, Gray Hughes? Scared to tell the truth, Gray Hughes? Scared to hold people accountable for conspiring to kill that young lady who they hated? Or let's go back to the departure from the room. Hey, Gray Hughes. What about Kanika, Manifa, and Shemaya leaving the room, and Kanika specifically telling Shemaya to go get her phone from Irene, but somehow Manifa decided to go back in the room too, which justified the claim that Kanika had wandered off without them? Huh? Why would Kanika decide to hop on the elevator if she's waiting on her phone, huh? What does this all mean for those who are wondering about that case? Monifa lied and said she went back in the room with Shemaya, but in reality, neither one of them went back in the room to get the phone because Irene didn't have it. Monifa claimed it took 10 to 15 minutes to get Kanika's phone, and when they came back out, Kanika was gone. Irene claimed that only Shemaya came back in the room to get the phone. So how is Monifa also in the room? Yeah, of course. And it wouldn't take 10 to 15 minutes to unhook a phone from the Bluetooth. That takes 5 seconds. All lies by the peers, right, Gray Hughes? Oh, but it gets deeper, right, Gray Hughes? Because if they're lying about the departure, get this, Gray Hughes, this means drumroll.
They are physically with Kanika.
He calls himself an investigator, yet never broke down those key issues, spending time running around debunking others who present their theories. And let's put it into perspective more here. Gray Hughes was almost obsessed with debunking others, claiming, oh, nobody is seen here, she's by herself, there's nobody peeking behind the door or the wall, etc. Okay, but when it comes to how she even got in those hallways, he never broke down the lies the peers told. If I'm not mistaken, he even debunked the theory that Kanika was drugged at the party. His theory, or so-called opinion, was that Kanika was simply so drunk that she lost her way and ended up deep into the hotel, wandering all around until she reached that kitchen. Logic here, why would Kanika get so drunk when she was the only one in her group that had a driver's license and was responsible for her mother's vehicle in which the group came to the party in? See, he never broke any of that down, too busy squirming around executing damage control. Anyone who examined that surveillance knew that even though you are seeing only Kanika at face value, you would know she was not alone. And that's when people started to question if the surveillance was authentic or not. And of course it was exposed as being edited to hide those other individuals. What about Kanika just popping up in surveillance in the conference floor footage, coming from the very elevator she allegedly got on by herself, yet others are seen physically walking back and forth from the elevator. But Gray Hughes pretended to genuinely believe she was all alone. Why would you protect the truth? Because you do realize by doing that, you're not only doing Kanika an injustice, but you're also protecting the killers. Well, look at that, and he's somehow being interviewed on court TV about the Idaho murders case. Males took her out of the room with Monifa and Shemaya tagging along. Nobody was in those halls because it was very late. And the real surveillance footage would show Kanika was being physically forced to go to each area she headed to. And the reason the kosher kitchen was the final stop is because 2 of the partygoers who were responsible for drugging Kanika at the party, their father was a supervisor of a contracting construction company working on that very kosher kitchen. Yeah, it was carefully thought out, just like the Idaho murders were. And just like the Idaho murders, the killers in the Kanika Jenkins case basically tried to frame the hotel for committing the murder and forced them to cover it up. Because if you really saw what was happening in that surveillance, it would break your heart. They had to edit the footage. Rosemont PD and Crown Plaza had to cover it up. And there may have been some individuals who were involved outside of that circle, but it hurts Kanika's heart more that her so-called friends betrayed her that way. Just like the peers in the Idaho murders case. But ask Gray Hughes, Kanika just wandered through the halls like a zombie, with no sense of where she was or where she was going. Oh, but she sure did find a specific location to go at the end, huh, Gray Hughes? It seems she knew exactly where she was going, huh, Gray Hughes? Who are you really working for, huh? The FBI? Tell the truth, Gray Hughes. Stop carrying water for criminals unless you're a criminal yourself, huh? Looks like you have on one of those human masks that the FBI use to protect their identities in their covert operations. He might even be undercover CIA. That's who started using that shit first. Is your name really Gray Hughes? Huh? They bring in a DC agent on live television with no credibility, reaffirming their own narratives about the case, attempting to debunk the truth that there were multiple killers, just like he attempted to debunk the truth that Kanika was murdered. So he gets paid for his so-called guest appearance, is put in the national spotlight as a so-called true crime investigator, and he's getting paid off of true crime cases on YouTube. But it's a free country. Hey, I guess everyone has the right to profit off of deaths. I have a question, though. Did he reach out to Court TV, or did they reach out to him? Oh, who am I kidding? He reached out to them, of course. That means he wanted to go on live television and push the narrative that Kohberger was the killer. Why now? Huh? His appearance was recent, reviewing the Linda Lane surveillance. Why didn't you reach out early in the case? Oh, because you've been snooping around, watching others, and how the truth is coming out about who was behind those murders. Damage control activated, let me get my bullhorn, and say it was Kohberger on live television. Yep, they always panic when the truth starts to come out. This is the chaos sector.
Well, thank you, Chaos Sector. That was a really very eye-opening video that the Chaos Sector came out with. They always have good content when they come out. I just want to say thank you to all my subscribers and members and non-subscribers who sent me very encouraging and uplifting messages while I was in the hospital. I just want to say thank you, and I love you guys. And I will still do my best to get to the bottom of this Idaho 4 case. Yes, I mean, someone has got to. Like always, please like, share, subscribe to my channel. And if you're going to become a member, please hit that join button. For new content and coming soon, members only live streams. And I want to say thank you to Holly Berry and her husband, who purchased a sweatshirt from my merch store last night. My wife told me about it when she was picking me up from the hospital this morning. I want to say thank you to those two.
And please, like always, keep it witchy, guys. Ha 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 ha.
Peace out. I love my new stream box. Oh my god, I sound like Alvin from the Alvin and the Chipmunks.
I love you guys. Peace.
When you're not here, life is insufferable. Don't be a stranger, even though we said pause. Darling, I fear pause is impossible. 'Cause I want your love around no matter the cost. My